Gerald and Colin camped for the night on the outskirts of Peakhaven, a small village nestled between the tall Rogat Mountains and the Eldmar Forest. Gerald unhitched Rebel, hung oats around the pony's neck, and left him to feed. "Why are we camping here?" asked Colin. "Peakhaven is just there. I can see the lights of the inn." "It's more wizardly and adventurous to camp when you're on an important quest." "No, it's not." Colin folded his arms and looked at Gerald expectantly. "And I had a discussion with the resident wizard here, I forget his name, on the merits of allowing a phoenix to molt by itself, or whether assisting it would help its transformation. And it appears that removing a tail feather causes the bird to launch itself into the air, fly into the thatch of the roof, and struggle and squawk quite a lot before bursting into flames. The resulting fire in the newly thatched roof was the point at which we agreed not to see each other for a very long time. He took it all in good humour, though. So basically, we're likely to end up with a toasty appearance, similar to that roof you mentioned, if we, actually you, ever set foot in the village again." "Sort of. But I still have the feather." Gerald patted his high-quality apothecary pouch proudly. "I'm going to trade it for a shiny amulet I saw in Sendora." Gerald heard Colin groan with exasperation, but was relieved to see his apprentice turn away and search for kindling for the fire. He and Colin sat by the small fire Gerald had started, courtesy of a spell acquired from a friend. They tucked into a juicy rabbit obtained as a result of Gerald's first attempt at lighting the fire. The spell had ricocheted off a tree and hit the unsuspecting rabbit instead of the kindling tower Colin had constructed. Gerald's wand, although functional, had accuracy problems, and he wasn't sure whether this was due to a slight bend or the small crack at the tip. He knew someone in Sendora who could readjust it for him, though. Gerald and Colin had been together as apprentices for only a few weeks. Their sponsors lived in Sendora and had allocated them to their posts as village wizards in Molehaven. This seemed to be the norm for new young wizards. They would be sent to the far reaches of the realm, where the damage they could do while still learning was limited, although Gerald, for some unknown reason, had been sent about as far as you could get and still be within Wivendorn. Gerald enjoyed his status as the senior wizard of the village, although this title was rather flexible, as Gerald had managed to shrink 2 inches in the short time since Colin's arrival. "So," said Colin, "explain to me why you wanted to be a wizard again. After all the time I've spent with you, I still feel as if you aren't taking our profession very seriously." A flutter of indignation rippled through Gerald's body. Obviously he needed to put Colin straight about his dedication to wizardry. "When I was younger, I spent my spare time studying biographical literature on the most famous wizards in the land. Rather than join my father's business, I was drawn to the selfless study of magic. I wanted to use my natural talents to help others." Colin snorted, and Gerald lifted his gaze from the fire. "You really need to sort that cold out. It's the second time today I've heard that noise. Do you want to use one of my healing spells?" "No, I feel fine." "What literature did you study?" "Well, there was the Great Adventures of Gradval the Elder, and the Quest of Vandrom the Great, and—" "Those are comics." "No, they're not. They are great literary works, cunningly disguised to assist in the visualization of the more important aspects of these wizards' accomplishments." "They're comics," said Colin flatly. "Anyway, what about you?" Gerald changed the subject. "How did you get into wizarding?" "My father is a baron near Sendora, and has friends in the wizard's court. I visited them regularly, and Celion, a high wizard there, suggested I enter the apprentice program when I reached the minimum height. Father said Celion saw a natural talent in me, and I would go far." "Molehaven is about as far from Sendora as you can get," Gerald laughed. "So I suppose he was right." "You said that your father is a businessman," said Colin. "What does he do?" "He's a purveyor of high-quality industrial fertilizers. He uses only the best natural ingredients from the peak of the equine industry." "He shovels horse poop." "No, he doesn't. He's also expanding into the import and export side of this lucrative profession. Ah, you mean he shovels horse poop from several different villages? Well, if you want to quantify the highly skilled business conducted by my father in such base terms, I suppose... Gerald's gaze fell back to the fire. I will not shovel poop for a living. His father might be proud of his business, but Gerald knew he wanted, no, needed to do more. I am a wizard, and I will prove to father that it is what I was meant to do. Well, I suppose we ought to get some sleep, said Gerald abruptly. We still have a long way to go before we reach Sendora. With that, Gerald rolled over onto his side and tried to ignore Colin's gaze. It looks as if my father isn't the only one I have to prove myself to. A beautiful morning chorus woke Gerald. The rising sun cast a warm glow across his face. In a nearby stream, water leapt from rock to rock on its long journey to the ocean. Splat! Bloody birds! I hate nature. Gerald wiped the dribbling bird poop from his face. Isn't that supposed to be lucky? Asked Colin. Not for that bird when I get hold of it. Gerald walked to the stream, washed his face, and filled the leather water bag. He doused the fire, hitched Rebel to the cart, and loaded their possessions into the back, glaring at the offending thrush that was nonchalantly preening itself out of his reach. Ready? He called to Colin. Just finishing washing yesterday's clothes. Why? Because they're dirty. Don't you wash yours? Gerald climbed onto the cart. Only for special occasions. Mine are magically resistant to dirt and smelly bits. So all your wizardly attire is smell resistant? Yes, it is, said Gerald. It's amazing what you can buy at the local market. Wizarding isn't all about book learning, you know. Gerald noticed Colin's lips tighten as he arranged his wet clothes over the sides of the cart before climbing up next to him. Where to? Asked Colin. We'll skirt the village. I'd rather not meet, what's his name? We should be able to make Sendora before nightfall, barring any mishaps. Said Colin. So probably not before sunset then, eh? Gerald slipped a look Colin's way. He had the distinct feeling his apprentice didn't trust his magical abilities. Obviously 1 or 2 little hiccups were inevitable when attempting more advanced wizardry-type stuff, and he was certain Colin's eyebrows would grow back in time. The rickety cart creaked and groaned as they circumnavigated the village. Gerald was invigorated. They were on an important quest, even if he wasn't quite sure what the actual quest was. He knew he'd be chatting to some fellow wizards and buying essentials, though. Plus, he had his trusty staff in his hand, and his superior wand tucked into the band of his wizard's hat. Your money or your life! Jerked out of his reverie, he pulled back on the reins to halt the cart. 2 masked men stood in the middle of the trail, holding very sharp-looking swords. Colin seemed to be mumbling in terror at the sight of these bandits. Gerald turned to face the 2 ruffians. He stood pulling his shoulders back and lifting his chin to gain an extra inch. Gerald grabbed the wand from his hatband and assumed a stance of battle readiness. Out of the way, ruffians, said Gerald. How dare you interrupt a very powerful wizard on a vital quest? They doubled over with laughter, obviously not understanding the gravity of their situation. Colin continued to mumble away to himself. Looks like I'm going to have to deal with them myself. He pointed his wand at the 2 giggling bandits. Fiat Ignum! The end glowed white-hot and shook in his hand. A bolt of ice-blue light shot out. It arced left and ricocheted off a rock before continuing into the depths of the forest. It struck a few more objects before a scream of pain reached his ears. Sorry. Gerald squinted at the end of his wand. When he looked up, he noticed the 2 bandits were still shaking, not with laughter, but fear. Aha! That did the trick. The bandits walked toward the back of the cart, surprised looks plastered on their faces. They laid their swords and several other pointy-looking weapons next to Gerald's wizard's chest. Rifling through their pockets, they pulled out purses of gold and laid them next to the weapons. What's going on? One asked the other. I don't know, but I can't stop myself, said his friend. Colin still muttered to himself, and his body seemed to glow. The two robbers returned to the front of the cart, bowed to Colin, and doffed their caps. "We're sorry if we caused any inconvenience, sir." The bandits turned and walked away. Gerald heard them still talking as they left. "What was all that about, Pete? I couldn't do nothing. And why did we give 'em all our money and weapons and things?" "Dunno, Derek. We should just get out of this game and go back to industrial fertilizer production. It's much safer." "Yeah. Where can we steal a couple of shovels then?" As the bandits disappeared into the depths of the forest, Gerald noticed Colin had stopped chanting and returned to his normal, non-glowing self. He also noticed a sly grin on his friend's face. Gerald shrugged. "I soon saw those two off, eh? They know better than to mess with a high wizard on an important quest now, don't they?" "They certainly do." The strange glint in Colin's eye made Gerald squirm, and he felt even more uncomfortable as Colin grew an inch before his eyes. Huh? How come Colin gained the height and not me? After all, it was my superior magical ability that saw those bandits off. An uneasy feeling swept through Gerald as he grabbed the reins and got the cart moving again. They skirted the northern edge of the mountains and took a right fork onto a paved road leading to Sandora. As they progressed, they passed outlying farms that supplied food to the region's capital. Soon, the spires of the palace and Wizard's Court appeared in the distance. Gerald waved at farmers and travellers as they gave the passing pair a friendly wave, an actual friendly wave, and he knew this was where he wanted to be, amongst a thriving metropolis where his talents were truly appreciated. The city's huge gates and drawbridge came into view, and Gerald could make out guards patrolling the walls. "How does it feel to be home?" he asked Colin. "Great. I can't wait to see Celian again and find out if he acquired any of the ancient texts I asked for. I also want to see my father. It would be nice to have a real lunch for a change." "Ancient texts? Pa, I'm after really important items like magical amulets, new words, and other practical stuff pertaining to advanced wizarding." "I've got to get my wand recalibrated and pick up a special item I had put aside," said Gerald, rubbing his hands with glee. Brightly coloured banners and pennants flew from every visible rooftop and spire. Jesters, jugglers, and bards lined up to enter the city. "Wow, I didn't expect this sort of reception," said Gerald in awe. "They must have been told about our quest the moment we left Molehaven." I don't think this is for us, Gerald." "Who else could it be for?" Colin sighed, and Gerald opened his mouth to tell him to accept this great hospitality gracefully when a guard blocked their path, taking hold of Rebel's harness. Not quite ready for us yet, my man?" asked Gerald. "Need a few more minutes to make sure the dignitaries are ready to receive us?"
"Eh?"
"We understand. Let us know when you want us to make our entrance." Gerald grinned. Colin groaned and leaned forward, placing his head in his hands. "Are you feeling all right? Is the excitement getting to you?" "This is so embarrassing," Colin groaned.
"Right then, young fellow my lad," said the guard. "Go through the gates, and Jurg will take your cart and pony to the stable. Then you can see the prince."
"Ooh, the prince wants to greet us," said Gerald. "I must say, I didn't expect the nobility to take such an interest. But, on the other hand, our quest is of vital importance to the realm."
"Ah, good one, sir. Keeping in character, are we?" asked the guard. "These kiddies' fancy dress parties for the prince's birthdays always bring out the best in you little ones."
"No," said Gerald, aghast. "We're here on important business of a wizarding nature."
"Of course you are, young sir. I'd hurry up, though. It's almost time for the jelly and custard to be served."
But... Gerald didn't get any further, as a huge hairy hand grabbed Rebel's harness and led them through the gates.